Welcome, everybody. Actually, a special thank you to Dustin, Marcel, and Rhonda. We've spent the last couple months meeting, putting together today's presentation. And so there were a lot of behind the scenes communication that happened and work that went on. And these kinds of partnerships, I think, are so invaluable when we have an audience of people that are all wanting this information, that we can partner together and do that. So thank you for that partnership. Just a couple opening comments. An interesting statistic that came across in an article this weekend from SHRM to all of us that might be national SHRM members. This article pointed out that only about 1% of the people in the United States are veterans, which means that 99% of us are getting our information about veteran culture or veterans in general, or their roles through movies, TV, other kinds of sources that aren't direct. So I think a meeting like this today, where we hear from people that have actually experienced those things and understand the culture firsthand, really enlighten us. Another statistic that I thought was great that was highlighted in this article by SHRM indicated about 24% unemployment rate with military spouses, that moving to probably as high as 32% because of COVID. And we're going to hear today that not only is there an unemployment rate, but there's an underemployment rate in that population. Thinking about not capitalizing on those spouses' natural gifts and talents that they have. And I spent my life, my career, working for an organization that really believes in talent and utilizing that. And it makes me sad when people have these strengths and these abilities and they're not able to use them. We spend a lot of our life working, and to be able to work in a role that capitalizes on that talent and utilizes that is so important. So we're going to hear a little bit more about kind of spouses and what that looks like in terms of a population that we might be able to hire. And then thirdly, I wanted to mention that SHRM has developed an incredible curriculum where if you want more information on how to attract, how to retain, how to engage veterans, that there is actually some free curriculum out there. And Rhonda is going to talk a little bit more about this, that you don't have to be a member of SHRM. You don't have to know anything about SHRM. We'll provide the website to you. You can jump on and actually become certified and put that up on your LinkedIn profile or maybe your website profile, so that you become really a veteran-friendly space for people to reach out to you in regards to having some starting conversations. So with that, I want to introduce Greg Putnam, and I'm going to read his bio to you. Greg transitioned to the private sector after 9 years of active duty service as a U.S. Navy SEAL. His service to our nation includes multiple military qualifications and overseas deployments. Greg is the business development manager at Ascent Vision in Bozeman, a company specializing in precision technologies for the manned and unmanned aerospace industry. Greg helped to build and develop a strong customer base and had direct influence in the recent acquisition of AVT by CACI. Most recently, Greg co-founded a regenerative agriculture and cattle company. This company is devoted to producing the highest quality beef using a regenerative agricultural approach that is environmentally friendly and improves the quality of the land. Greg has been a consultant for a number of Montana-specific nonprofits and as a board member for a local Bozeman nonprofit, Warriors and Quiet Waters. Greg has experience in military and defense technologies, product development, cattle production, project management, and fundraising consulting. Greg lives in Bozeman, Montana with his wife, 3 daughters, and an Australian Shepherd. Greg, we're anxious to hear from you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who made time this morning to join this webinar and to listen to some of my thoughts and things. And I'll kind of go through my transition story to the private sector, and then we'll have time, as Dustin said, at the end for questions, etc. So as Susan mentioned, I was a Navy SEAL for just shy of 10 years. In that time, I worked at a number of different SEAL teams. I completed 4 deployments. I held a number of management positions within that time frame and managed teams from starting out just having to manage myself to having to manage, teams of 4 to 8 to 20 to 60 of various backgrounds and various, job profiles. And in that time, there were, a lot of opportunity and growth. And I look back on that 10 years extremely fondly in all the things that the military was able to give me and that I still use today. So with that, I had been living in Montana prior to joining the Navy. I'd been working in the outdoor industry as a fly fishing guide and a number of other things. And the military was just something that always kind of was a draw for me. And, it was a decision that that we made to go forward with and to give a shot to serve in this country. And it was it's a hard decision to go into it. And it's an even harder decision sometimes to go out of it. People in the military generally leave in kind of 2 different ways. And that's either you're retiring after, a long career of a minimum of 20 years, or at certain times, instead of continuing with your service enlistments, those contracts basically run out and you have the opportunity to then exit the military kind of on your own, accord. And that's where I fell into. So at 10 years, I was kind of at that point where you have to make that decision whether you're going to continue on or you're going to transition into something else. And in that process, I had 3 kids and I had a fantastic experience, but it just felt like for me, it was the right time to transition out of the military. And that started this kind of new process and this new journey. And with that, it's an interesting time in a lot of people's lives because you kind of have this clean slate where you're able to choose for the first time in a long time, where you want to live, what you want to do. But it's also a little bit frightening because you do have all these options and you went from this, scenario where it was kind of, this is where you need to be and this is the job that you're going to do. And it's very well defined and you know how long you're going to be there. And, you kind of get used to that process. When you make that transition, all that goes away. And I remember for me, when I decided that, and when my family decided that it was time to do something else, I had a list of all the things that I needed to do, not only to get out of the military, but then to, continue a career in a new direction and ultimately continue financial stability for my family. At the time, I was the sole working person in our family. And so I remember I had this super long list from all those things you need to do to process out of the military and selling your house and, vehicles and moving and also looking for a job and also figuring out, what that next step is going to be. Luckily for me, I started working with Anne-Marie Craig around that time, who you'll hear from later this morning. And they helped to kind of take some of those thoughts and ideas and really put them down into, kind of some direction to it. And so I knew, and my family knew, that we wanted to be back in Montana was our primary place we wanted to be. If we couldn't get there, we at least wanted to be in the Mountain West somewhere, but we spent a lot of time and effort focusing on kind of where we wanted to be. And I knew if I could kind of answer that, then what I was going to do was hopefully going to fall into line. And a friend of mine who had started Ascent Vision Technologies, Tim Sheehy, who was also a Navy SEAL, luckily their business was scaling at the time, but I was out here, I was interviewing with anybody that would sit down with me. I was basically interviewing for any job that I could potentially find locally here in the area. And it just so happened that Tim, their business was scaling and the skill set that I kind of had at the time, was the right fit for them. So, what I would say was it was a little bit easier for me in that regards, in that he kind of understood my skill set, but sometimes that just verbalizing what that skill set exactly is from your military experience into the civilian sector can be challenging. And it's challenging on both sides. It's challenging on the veteran because sometimes they don't know the way to phrase things that the civilian side is going to fully understand. And it's hard for the civilian side to understand some of that military stuff if that's not what their background is. And sometimes they're reluctant to ask out of respect for, what has, kind of as Susan mentioned, has kind of become like this this misconception of what everybody's experience in the military does and what everybody from the military's post experience is going to look like, because everybody's different. Of that 1% of people who serve in the military, there's a small fraction of that serve in combat units and have served in those units and completed combat tasks. So everybody's experience is slightly different, right? And so on the civilian side, sometimes it's hard because people don't want to pry too much, but then you may not actually be getting the full spectrum of what that veteran is potentially capable of for you as a potential employer. So anyway, I came on board with Ascent Vision Technologies, and at the time, we had less than 10 people. We were a growing company in the defense technology space, and there was a lot to do. It was very busy. We were also moving. And, as my life continued to be like very busy, it all seemed fine. And the day I got out of the Navy was the day I started work. And, as the business started to kind of stabilize and there wasn't as much, on a daily basis where you were doing 20 different things, but now you only had 2 or 3 different things and it slowed down a little bit. I started to realize, how challenging that transition could actually be. And I didn't take it, I thought when people said, oh, this is going to be hard, I thought how hard it could be. I was a Navy SEAL for 10 years. I've transitioned to other things before in my life. This isn't going to be hard at all. You're just going to go out and you're going to get a job and, you're going to do what everybody else, kind of does. And what I started to realize as kind of my life started to slow down a little bit was that it was hard. And it was hard because you go from, kind of this very high energy position with other very high energy people. And anybody who knows me knows that like I'm fairly high energy and I have a hard time like sitting still. I like being busy. I like doing a lot of different things. And as I started to have like kind of less to do on a daily basis, and the more I found myself sitting in front of a computer and the expectation was for me to be there, not from the completion of work, but from a time frame, it became very challenging for me. And it became challenging for the people that I worked with. They didn't understand why, at lunch, it was important for me to go out and maybe, get some exercise for an hour, and why, I didn't want to sit there and eat lunch and sit more for an hour and kind of converse with them about things or eat birthday cake. I had to go and like kind of expel some energy because I was used to doing that for 10 years. That became like part of my routine. And during that routine, you're also going from just kind of exposure to fairly high stress. And I'll talk more about, kind of the industry that or the military background I came from, which is, special operations, pilots, people that are engaged in high stress activities on a daily basis. That can include training, but also applying that in real world situations. And the exposure to that high stress over that long period of time can have, kind of chemical changes within you. And some of the things that like you maybe have been able to do or other people are able to do may not be as easy for veterans that come out of those type of backgrounds. And I remember thinking to myself, how is this so hard for me to just sit here and handle emails and phone calls? Everybody else seems to do it, but I was struggling. And on the outside though, everybody, my parents, my friends, they said, man, you've made this look so easy. My brother was going through the same transition and it didn't look as easy. And I remember my parents saying, this is so easy for you. And, I just don't understand why it's not as easy for him. And what they didn't know is that it wasn't easy. It was really hard. And I think I'm going to steal anecdote from Anne Marie's husband, Les, who, it's like you see a duck and they're swimming around on a nice pond, right? And they look like they're just cruising along, but, and everything's good. And they're under the surface, their little legs are just kicking away. And that's how I felt. And it started to have negative effects, not only to me personally, but, that carried over to my home life. And eventually, I got to the point where I was thinking, like, I've got to figure out something different here, or I've got to figure out a way to like make this work better. And I joke, but I was serious. This friend of mine who like does acupuncture, I like went to her and I was like, you got to help me, like, you got to reset something to help me be able to kind of sit here and, and she looked at me and said, well, that's maybe just not a good fit for you. There's nothing I can do that's going to help, kind of fix. And my job was great. The opportunity I had was awesome. It just wasn't and didn't become a great fit for me. There were certain aspects I was excelling in and other aspects I was not excelling in at all. And so I went to, luckily I felt like I had a good enough relationship with my overall boss and founder of that company. And I finally got to the point where I went and sat down with him and I just said, listen, like, I can't do this like this any longer. This is not a good fit for me. It's not a good fit for this company. And he said, well, what will be a good fit? And he was extremely open. And for somebody that's also been through those types of experiences and had ups and downs, he was very open about helping me find the right fit. And we were able to take away some of the things that were a struggle for me, and we were able to add in, some other areas that I was going to be able to continue to provide a high level of value for that company. And when we made that change, that was really, really, a great opportunity for me. But if he hadn't been so open about sitting down and talking about that with me and helping identify kind of, my positive attributes and also help take away some of the things that were, not a good fit, I'm not sure I would have been able to stay at that company. Point being is that transition process, and it's totally a process. It's not just like you're out of the military one day. There's ups and downs, there's highs and lows, there's changes. I know a number of people that have, extremely high functioning, high profile veterans that have gone to work for very large companies outside of Montana. One example, a guy my brother works at a large financial institution, and he's very big on hiring veterans because of my brother and my background. And so he's highly engaged in their veteran hiring process. And he hired a guy from one of the most highly specialized special operation units in the world. And this guy showed up expecting to be, an absolute rock star. And he struggled. He was a new guy. He had to relearn the things that all these other people had been doing for a long time. They did better than him. And his teammates sort of resented him for it. He was always kind of the guy that needed more help. He was always the guy that wasn't at the same level of performance in financial tasks. And this was a guy that went from executing some of the highest stress level operations at an extremely, extremely high level, and was being now looked at by his team as like an underperformer. And I remember talking to him about that and just the feeling that he had of like, how did my life go from this one thing to now this? And my response to him, and again, this was like good advice that I was giving other people that I wouldn't give to myself. But if you took anybody else and you introduced them to the world that like we used to work in, and you gave them like a very mediocre introduction to some of the skill sets, and then you started to, ask them to apply those skill sets while you applied pressure on them in negative pressure, I bet their level of performance would be very low. And that's what you're sort of asked to do. And you're seen as this person that comes from these very high functioning organizations. You're older. You've got this very interesting background to some. And the expectation is like, you're not going to need very much mentorship or support to start functioning at a high level. Where things kind of get lost is that it is a change. It's a different skill set. That veteran may be going through some things now that their life is slowing down a little bit and adjusting to that change and adjusting to kind of, the new person that they've ultimately become. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. That's like a very positive thing. And those attributes are extremely valuable to companies and corporations. But that person is going through a big change. And not everybody recognizes that. And not everybody comes from that same background. And, at the end of the day, it's no fault of anybody's. It's just sometimes veterans don't know how to communicate that, and their civilian teammates don't know how to communicate with them on that, especially if they start to struggle a little bit. And a lot of these people are not used to struggling. They don't want to make a change. They want to come in and say to you, hey, this isn't working. A lot of us have kind of a high resentment of quitting. I don't necessarily call it quitting in the civilian world. I call it like pivoting. And I've made a number of pivots based on my experiences to hold value to myself, but also bring value to anybody that I'm being paid for to work for. So, that was kind of, my situation. And through that acquisition process, I'm very lucky that I stuck it out and that I made those changes. That opened up a lot of flexibility for me to explore some areas that, that I wanted to move into. I had to take it on myself to kind of unlock some of those doors. And whether that's through like school, meeting people, opportunities. But I knew a direction that I wanted to be going, which I'm currently working in and really enjoying. But it took a while for me to figure that out. It took a couple of years. So what are we here to talk about, right? With Veterans Day coming up, I think this is a great time. I think it's amazing that there's even, opportunities and offices like Dustin's running with veteran outreach to help folks, both veteran and civilian, add really what can be amazing leaders, amazing teammates. Really, I remember I was at a thing one time and this guy was talking about how, at the end of World War II, most companies and their boards were made up of veterans, and they were leaders in the community. They were positive driving forces that started all these businesses and were on boards and did all these things. And the narrative shifted a little bit from then to now, where like now there's a little bit of this like, poor veterans, or there's a lot of people out there that, it's shifted through the opportunities that have existed. But if you look at veterans that have come back to the communities, and if you look at all the people moving to Montana right now, it benefits us all to encourage good people and good neighbors to be here. And it benefits your companies because it can ultimately positively affect your bottom lines by having better people. It's going to be a little bit on you, though, to help develop out and figure out like what those skill sets are and how to utilize that person. And so I guess, I don't love this terminology, but, where's the silver lining, right? It reminds me of like that. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that movie with Bradley Cooper, where he's like kind of the crazy guy and he runs around and he's telling everybody about the silver lining. You got to find the silver lining. And I don't know why I always think about that, but anyway, there may not be a silver lining other than, a couple things that employers can do to help, and that is going to be on you, is encouraging that communication, being somebody that's open to sitting down with that veteran, providing them potential mentorship, or sitting down and saying, how are things going for you? What do you like about your current position? How do you think you could do better at this company? What are some things that aren't working well? It's on you guys to help find that fit. And like I said, lucky for me, Tim was open enough to sit down with me. He could have just said, hey, if that's not the right fit for you, go find another place to work. But he didn't. He understood that it was, a process, and he helped me develop my skills. There's been a number of other people that have done the same thing. Hey, you may be really good at this based on like these other things that you used to do. And they helped find me opportunities. You know, it's on both sides of the line to help you know, develop that. The other thing I would say from your perspective is, you know, give you might have a couple people that come in an interview and you might not fully understand exactly what that veteran's experience is. And I would encourage you to, give them a chance. Maybe give them a little bit more of a chance or a little bit more leeway or flexibility if they're not the perfect fit in checking every single box that your HR department put together, because you may find that they just aren't great at like telling you how they fit that box, but that they may fit every single one of those boxes. But it's on you to kind of also like ask some of those leading questions, like help them, you know, ultimately help you. And you know, I think the positive outcomes that you could both get to, the opportunity is huge on both ends, but it's definitely a two-way street. But I would encourage you to maybe take a risk on somebody that has a great military and background, and encourage them to come in. They can be great mentors to your teammates. They bring in experience as a younger person that you don't get in the private sector. Nobody's trusting most, you know, new guys with a $3 million budget of sensitive items. The military trusted me with it. It's hard to say though how that would ultimately like apply to the businesses that you folks are all involved in. But I will say this: encouraging, hiring, mentoring, and developing veterans into leadership roles in your companies, encouraging good neighbors and good folks to move to the state of Montana and continue to drive economic success in this state. Veterans can play a huge role in that. The state is a fantastic opportunity for veterans as well, and offers a number of recreational outlets that I think are hugely beneficial and hugely positive. The ability to get outside, the ability to, you know, maintain an active lifestyle in and outside of work, having peers that also appreciate those things and appreciate, you know, high levels of recreation. There's bonds there that you can make immediately based on shared experiences outside of military, but finding those. And I would say, you know, the encouragement and, you know, kind of like channeling those positive attributes while helping that veteran work through, you know, some of the challenges that they'll have both personally and professionally, and giving them a chance. It's not a requirement, right? But it is a appreciated outlet to people that rose their hand to serve this country. They volunteered to put themselves and their families, you know, not only on the line, but the moving and the commitment that they made to this country. I'm not going to say it deserves anything more than the potential opportunity, but it should be considered that these folks have given a lot and can give a lot back to you. And one thing I made a note of earlier, and this is going to be kind of my final comment, is don't also overlook the spouses of veterans as well, who have also had to give up jobs in places that they love. They've had to move, you know, they've had to do all these things and all this commitment, but what that has like taught them to do and what that gives them is also like a huge amount of resilience, the ability to like move in and meet new people. You know, they're generally like kind of have to become like fun, outgoing. They've had to make these changes. Change is hard. These people have become very good at it. And if you have a military spouse, you know, I encourage you to dive into their story as well and learn and hear about what they've been through and how they can, you know, take those things and help apply them to you, because these are an incredible demographic of folks as well. And, you know, I think as industry and business to not open as many opportunities as possible to both veterans and their families and spouses, you as a business are missing a fantastic opportunity to really build amazing teams. And those teams can ultimately help your business grow and succeed. And that's the goal, right? And it can be done together. So with that, again, I appreciate you listening, and I'll open up to any questions that anybody has for me. This, again, is just all my own thoughts and feelings based on my own experience. So if anybody disagrees, that's completely fine. And please go ahead and fire away with any questions. I'd be happy to give you my thoughts.
Greg, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I think I just had a conversation with a buddy of mine about this meeting that was coming up, and he found out, oh, we got a Navy SEAL on there, and he said, oh, those SEALs, they get out of the military and man, they just do amazing things. Like they have it easy, right? And so I love your sharing and willing to be honest and vulnerable with us. That I think that we are talking about some of the myths about veterans, right, that exist. And some of those myths are on the negative side, but some of them also are on that other side that we're missing the boat on. So thank you for sharing that. We do have a question from Chris Manos that I was hoping that you'd maybe answer for. Oh, go ahead.
Comment on that too. And people do amazing things, right?
Yes.
I think what people miss though is the fact that how long it might take you to reach amazing again. And I'll tell you right now, like, I feel like I'm just kind of catching my stride, and it's been almost 4 years of going through that process. Yeah, there's some wins, there's some losses, right? But you see these people at the end result. You don't see like the climb to the top or the climb down sometimes to get back moving forward, right? It's like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you got to go down a little bit to get in a better route to go up. And I think that misconception can be just like, oh, they got here and it was easy for them, right? And that makes it challenging because you feel like somebody's not, actually fully recognizing the fact that like the difficulties you may face to get there.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Chris Manos asks, what were some of the things specifically that were, if you'd be willing to share, that were adjusted by, was it Tim? I think you mentioned your boss, that after the discussions that he had with you and your company, if you'd be willing to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about some of the main kind of structural things was more, and it was actually giving me a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more guidance myself. So basically what we looked at were some areas that were challenging for them as a company that they weren't in currently that they wanted to move into. And that utilized like my skill set very well, but it also opened up a little bit more flexibility for me to not be so driven by like a 9 to 5, where it was more task-based than time-based. And with that, I could organize my own schedule. I could fit the things in there that made me a far better employee, which for me were I'm like a lab that gets left inside all day. If I don't go for a walk, like I eat the furniture and I can't help it. And I've learned that about myself. And so like I could get up in the morning, I could burn through a bunch of emails and phone calls, but I could organize my own schedule. And then I could go for a hike for an hour and I would come back and I'd be ready to get after it again. But if I didn't get that, then it was challenging. And he understood that, but not everybody on the team did, because that hadn't been part of their procedure in their life for a long time. So opening up and giving me what I would consider to be more flexibility and leeway and ultimately more trust gave me a lot more buy-in as well, because I was like, oh, no longer is it like, they're allowing me to task organize and task focus as I see fit, which I was used to doing. And it allowed me to feel like I had more buy-in and also gave me more motivation to perform well, to continue to keep that leeway. Versus being kind of like given a task, somebody else giving like a similar task. I don't love like what I'll call dual parallel efforts, where you have multiple people doing the same thing, but nobody gets to actually run it and complete it. And a lot of veterans, and myself included, it used to be like, Greg, this is your part of this to plan and execute, go. And they would let you see it through. And even if that meant failure, that's like a learning perspective. So they gave me the opportunity to actually take it from like start to finish. And they allowed me to manage and run that in a way that I saw fit, without a lot of like interjection. Now I've been there for a while to earn that. So I think there's a fine line between like giving inputs, but also allowing somebody to like, kind of show you what they can do, because you might be surprised, and you might be surprised how creative some of these folks can be. And so again, they kind of just opened up the flexibility on my end to run the program kind of the way that I saw fit. And they trusted me, and then with that, I trusted them. And it ended up being very successful because I was able to get us into some of those areas. But I also felt way better, and I could bring a lot more positive energy into that position when I felt like I was able to like control my my day a little bit better.
Greg, loved your comments about kind of the interview process and employers and not understanding maybe some of the terminology, some of the skills. We've got a lot of employers on this Zoom meeting today, and thinking if there's one piece of learning, education, an article that they could read to be better equipped to understand and translate that information, what would you recommend to them?
Sure. So I've sat on the other side of the house at this point too. Like I've been in your seat of hiring veterans as well. I was heavily involved with the hiring of the new executive director of Warriors in Quiet Waters. I've also hired a number of folks through the other businesses that I work for. And I will be the first to admit, as a military person in a military background, I don't understand all the nuances and differences of people that worked outside of where I worked. And there's things where I looked at their resumes and I go, wow, like this probably is extremely impressive. I don't even know what that means. Like if you're a pilot, or if you're like an aircraft mechanic and I'm a Navy SEAL, like don't assume that I know everything about that just because we were. So a lot of times I have to ask kind of like leading questions. Hey, can you like walk me through this? Tell me about, a management. I don't completely understand everything on your resume. Can you pick something on here where you feel like there's a very good, kind of bridge to what you think you would be doing here, and kind of walk me through like what this means and how you think you could apply that skill set to us in this new position if you were hired. And, those questions are okay. Like just because you're sitting on the HR side, like you don't have to know everything. And sometimes that person's not going to be great at communicating what they did into that civilian sector. And Anne Marie and her programs are fantastic with helping do that, but not everybody goes through those programs. And some people are trying to like, and all they know, sometimes you take a guy that's been doing, or a gal that's been doing this for 25, years, and they know this, and they are used to everybody kind of understanding what their job is. I mean, there's positional managers within the military that knows your skill set and plugs you into the next job. You don't have to sit there and interview for that job generally. You don't have to negotiate, all these things, but again, that's where it becomes what I would call like, it's an interview, but it's also a little bit of like a partnership building. And I would say like the best thing you could do is help that person talk about their experience and how it might translate, but also help them translate that into civilian verbiage. So if somebody's been in a management role, in a leadership position where they had to go and, let's say they were trying to increase their operational capacity in the military, you're like, oh, so that's kind of like a sales and business development type role, and lead them down like kind of the road a little bit where you just might have to change your expectation of the conversation, where a civilian person that has their own career progression can probably translate that far better. And your expectation is of them to translate it. Where as like an HR person, you may just have to be like a little bit more open to the fact that this person may not know. Doesn't mean they don't have the skills. They might not know how to tell you, I want to be in business development. Or they might think, I want to be in project management. I thought I wanted to be in project management until I actually talked to somebody in project management and realized that like I'd be sitting on Excel all day long and realized that was not the right fit for me. But I didn't know that. It just, I was like, oh, I was a team leader. I was a manager, project management. And if it's not the right fit for you or for them at your company, I would maybe give them some feedback and say like, listen, this may not be the right fit. I think what you're saying that you want to be doing is more in line with this, and if you know some opportunities out there, other people they may be able to talk to, introductions go a long way. And you may not hire that person, but that doesn't mean that you can't help unlock some doors for them. And you never know where that person may come back into your life. So I would encourage you to just be part of their process. And if it's not the right fit for you, don't let that be the end of the conversation or the end of the road. Provide them some feedback and some other directions they may be able to go, because they may not know and they may be looking for that advice from you.
I'm also now excited too, and I'm actually not going to just read her resume. I was planning on doing that, but she's going to tell you amazing things. I will tell you, I met Anne Marie Craig last year. The Commit Foundation is leading the nation, leading the transition of veterans across our country. They are the premier organization, and they are based right in Bozeman, Montana. And so we are so lucky to have the expert in this. Greg mentioned just a moment ago. And so with that, I will shut up because you need to hear from Anne Marie Craig.
Thank you, Dustin. And thank you, Greg. I think one of my favorite comments was yours at the end, that you may not hire, but you can help. It's a really important message for everyone here on this call. To start off, again, my name is Anne Marie Craig, and I'm blessed to be the co-founder and the CEO of the Commit Foundation based out of Bozeman. My husband and I met at Fort Bragg, North Carolina in 2006, prior to both of our deploying with the Special Operations Task Force. He was in the United States Army and I was in the intelligence community. In 2012, our family began visiting the state of Montana. We were in search of our place. We were coming off of multiple deployments to war zones, and we needed a place to heal and a place to grow and a place where we could prioritize our family. And so from the bottom of my heart, I can't express enough gratitude for Montana and all of the people here. And as Greg mentioned, the amazing resources that Montana offers. Our foundation began in 2012, and we have built an incredible transition program. And I think we've done that because its founders and our staff, we've all lived through the transition experience. We don't tolerate mediocre programs. We don't tolerate ego when it comes to this work. And we always meet our clients, whether it's a transitioning service member or a company that's interested in building strategic initiatives around veterans. We always meet them where they are, and we build solutions around them. We're not prescriptive when it comes to this work. Earlier this year, we had an opportunity to submit an innovation grant to the state of Montana, and we proposed that we would partner with Montana businesses and the university system to play a role in the successful transition, reintegration, and the investment of military talent into the companies and into the fabric of our state here. So we're honored to have a chance to speak with you today and talk about how we can increase awareness of Commit's transition programs, as well as our corporate education initiative. Our goal is to empower Montana businesses to play a part in reinvesting the 1% that serves our country back into the fabric of our state. I'm going to share some slides with you. I hope I can get this to work. Okay. I'll go over our agenda real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about Commit, our corporate education program, the model that we use, which is called Invest, Transferable Skills. We'll do a quick case study together. Then I'm going to call you to imagine how you can make changes in your organizations when it comes to strategic veteran initiatives. Hopefully we'll have some time for a Q&A, but I also want to honor time, and please know that we'll plan to follow up with all of you. Just to start, I want you to recall a time where you felt like an outsider. Maybe you were visiting a foreign country. Maybe it's when you were younger and you weren't picked to be on a team. Or maybe you're an introvert and you're walking into a networking event where you don't know anyone. How did you feel? Maybe take a second and put it in chat. Give an example. How did you feel? Were you in a foreign country? What did people do to make you feel at ease? What did people do that made it more difficult? Few people have worn the uniform. Matter of fact, only 1% of our country serves. Yet we all know what it feels like to be an outsider. 99% of our country get to live because of the 1% that defend our way of life. Some people talk about guilt that is associated with not serving, but I'm here to tell you that the opportunity is far more powerful than just feeling guilt. We have an opportunity to take a genuine interest in Montana's veteran population and ensure that they live purposeful lives after their time in uniform. We might have a few veterans here on this call that have experienced someone thanking them for their service. How did that make you feel? At Commit, we believe that there is an opportunity to go beyond thank you. And we'd like to offer and suggest to each of you that when you interact with veterans, think about thank you and. What else can you speak with those men and women about? What can you say after thanking someone for their service? Maybe you could talk about what service they were in, what unit they were assigned to, what did they do in the military? Did they ever deploy? Just showing genuine interest and compassion can go a long way. It's important to know as employers and folks in the HR space that many veterans have impostor syndrome. They feel like foreigners. They feel like outsiders. And that's why our conversation today is so important. Awareness, empathy, and the search for understanding and connecting is all a part of becoming veteran ready. At the Commit Foundation, our mission is to help service members and veterans transition into successful roles and careers post-service. Just this year, throughout COVID, we've extended our mission to spouses, and we're incredibly excited about that. Our organization operates along 3 lines of operation. We have one-on-one transition services for military personnel, veterans, and their spouses. We conduct mentoring workshops all over the country, to include ones in the Gallatin Valley as well as up in the Flathead. And outside of these 2 veteran-facing programs, we have a corporate education program where we help companies and academic institutions build strategic initiatives around veterans. Over the years, Commit has helped companies like SpaceX, Palantir Technologies, Guggenheim Partners, Facebook, Stanford, and the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. We are currently working with Johnson & Johnson and PayPal, and we're extremely excited about bringing our work to companies here in the state of Montana. Commit is focused on disrupting the status quo in the veteran space because our veterans deserve better than the status quo. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background just to know who you're speaking with today. I was actually born in South Carolina. I studied and played soccer at Wofford College, and I studied abroad my sophomore year in Spain. After that, I went on to graduate school where I studied abroad again, and I was working on a doctorate in Romance languages when this happened. And like many people in our country, I was called to serve. I moved to Washington, D.C. and had an opportunity to work across the interagency, primarily focused on special operations and counterterrorism. I got to deploy as a targeter and work with some of the finest leaders, both nationally and internationally. My husband and I mentioned we met at Fort Bragg prior to a deployment. He has so much to do with why I started the organization. My husband finished top of his class at West Point with a degree in applied math and computer science. His transition from the military to the CIA to starting 2 data science companies and now running a venture capital firm here in the state of Montana. It looks beautiful on paper, but it was incredibly hard at home. My husband was shot in the head in the Arghandab River Valley in Afghanistan in 2005, shortly before we met. And in all candor, it wasn't until we got married that I realized how traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress were going to be a part of our life. And it's what led me to start the Commit Foundation. So why commit? You know, these 4 things that you see here on the screen, they've been our differentiators since inception. The Commit Foundation is really big on ensuring that we change the narrative around veterans and we challenge the assumptions that people have around veterans being wounded, broken. We're very big on delivering and tracking and measuring our work. Quality over quantity resonates with us, but now in year 9, we are positioned to scale our programming and really focus on quality at scale. And I think the biggest thing that, you know, I'd like all of y'all to take away is we take the same personalized boutique approach to our corporate partners and our business partners as we do with our transitioning service members and veterans. If we have the opportunity to work together after today's event, we assure you that we will customize our solutions to the requirements of your team, your culture. No matter if you're at the beginning of a veteran initiative or if you've already been fortunate enough to bring veterans into your organization. So why is veteran corporate education so important? You know, why does the Commit Foundation, after being founded as an organization to focus on transitioning veterans, why did we add this layer? It's important because there's incredible pool of patriots who are amazing leaders, selfless employees, they're ethical, creative, and available. But none of that matters if there's not a great place for them to contribute. The veterans we serve, they're not just looking for a job, they're looking for a team and their next mission. They're coming into our program at an increasing rate and with an increasing desire to move to the state of Montana, but they don't know how to find you. For any of you who've spent time thinking about veterans here in Montana, I'm sure you know that 15% of our population are veterans. They're looking for good organizational cultures, and they want to continue, they want service, impact, and value creation to be a big part of their lives. We often talk that the men and women who come through our program have a gap in information, confidence, and imagination. And we truly believe that the companies on the other side have these same gaps. They don't understand how skill sets transfer. They often lack confidence when it comes to how to interpret a resume. And quite often we see on both sides, the veterans and the hiring agency, that they lack imagination about what someone's experience was and how they can translate that into their companies. Our objective at Commit is to lead the shift, from veteran friendly to veteran ready. What does veteran ready look like? I'd like all of y'all to take a second and think through something your company might have done or something you'd want your company to do and enter it in chat. How can you become veteran ready? When the Commit Foundation, I'll share an example. When we took on one of our earlier projects with Facebook, we saw that when they went out to increase their veteran employee base, they decided to go to the closest military base, which was Camp Pendleton, where you would find mostly Marines preparing for downrange operations, not necessarily the best recruiting ground for a technology company. There was low-hanging fruit where we could help Facebook understand that pockets of talent at bases like Fort Meade, NSA Georgia, or Fort Belvoir and INSCOM, simple things like that to help them think about where they were finding their talent. In 2015, I had an opportunity, in 2015, I had an opportunity to hear from an E9 who had built the veteran program at Macy's. And I remember he shared 4 things. He said at Macy's, when they built their veteran program, you get C-level buy-in, you start small, you provide the right training around that small, and then you exploit the heck out of your wins. He decided to follow those 4 rules in their logistics department. And before he knew it, every single division at Macy's wanted veteran talent on their team. Veteran ready surely requires leadership support from the top. The organization has to be willing to dedicate the resources and the budget to do this work. I think Greg brought up a great point earlier about being involved in a hiring process. He's in the Navy. You can't assume that a veteran can understand all the skill sets of the other services. Often companies decide to take a very lean route to hiring veterans, and they'll try to get a veteran employee to look at resumes or to vet candidates. And you can't assume that a chief warrant officer that flew in the 160th Airborne is going to be able to tell you, what a logistics person in the Army did. So I think it's really important to not be too lean when you think about hiring and retaining veterans, and really be sure to dedicate the appropriate resources or a partner with another organization like the Commit Foundation to help you think those processes and how you can assess the talent. Recently, we did a program and we took a survey of all the human resource persons on the call to see where they thought their problems were. And this was a word cloud we created from that survey. Now, I think at the core of it, you'll see understanding, and that's ultimately what our conversation comes down to today. But as I mentioned, the understanding is on both sides. Both the transitioning service member and veteran and the company need to be able to meet in the middle and really understand where those gaps in information, confidence, and imagination are. What I'd like to do with you now is we're going to do a bit of a case study. So if you don't mind making sure that the volume on your computer is up so that you can hear this story. This is a transitioning service member named Brian Kennedy who came through the Commit Foundation recently.
So my dad was Army, and he said, hey, if you're going to do anything, go Air Force. The path of getting a scholarship would help enable me to go to college. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Got picked up for special operations. So went through everything through Army Combat Dive, parachute program, static line, free fall. Worked at the team level, the squadron level, the group level. Spent time in 29 countries. Significant investments in the Pacific, North Africa, and Middle East. Most of those situations, there was no script. We were going into countries without kind of an unknown environment and really having to figure it out as we went along. So if you think about it, we transition out of high school or college, most of us. We're coming right into the military. We've really gone from home life, a very short college stint where there's some independence, and we've just spent about 2 decades establishing ourselves. We have families now, we have a culture, and really we have a comfort because there is stability. Compare that to the transition of going into private industry. 20 years is a long time. And now we're having to take a skill set and a comfort and transition that to a community that we just don't have exposure to. I don't even know the terms. I don't even know what I want to ask for in private industry. I'm concerned about financial transition. I'm concerned about stability of family and family balance. And what that has a tendency to do is create a barrier so that I am going to be safe. It's exciting. I can't wait to go solve new problems. Throw me out there and I think I'll do okay. But actually taking that courageous first step, that's a big leap for me. I'm excited to do it, but it's a lot of unknowns. So my dad was Army, and
As you listen to Brian's story, what surprises you most? Maybe enter it in chat. What are some of the thoughts that came up for you? Did any stereotypes of how he might show up in your organization present itself? Do you think your HR team could understand his resume? What would Brian bring to an organization like yours? What type of roles might he be suited for? I had the great pleasure of meeting Brian Kennedy in 2016 when he began to consider what life after his time in uniform would look like. I'll share with you that Brian has a bachelor's degree in computer science. He has 2 master's degrees. He's led up to 650 people, and he's been responsible for $236 million in budget. He's operated in 29 nations over a 24-year career in service to this country. He's built partnerships with embassy executives, host nation leaders, and local civilians. He's led one of the most highly decorated combat units in and out of war zones. Do you think he could lead in your company? When Brian transitioned from the military, he, like many of our veterans, suffered from this gap in information, confidence, and imagination. He had impostor syndrome when it came to the civilian workforce. And as business professionals, each of you need to understand that these highly talented and decorated men and women come to you feeling inadequate in spite of their massive successes. They don't know how to talk about themselves as individuals. They are quiet professionals, but they care deeply about team and mission and having an impact. When we think about gaps in non-military workforce awareness, we see that people don't understand the value of a veteran. They don't understand military culture and how skill sets can transfer. They don't understand what ongoing support looks like, and they don't understand where to find the talent. These are all things that the Commit Foundation, and I'm sure many of your military friends in your community can help you understand. I'm going to share just a little bit of content right now at this point. We're going to think a little bit about transferable skills. We've seen across the boards how well service members integrate into companies. They have adaptability. They are accountable. They are coachable. And I think a lot of folks think that people that have served in the military a long time are so strict and rigid and that it might be hard to break them of habits. The military has done an incredible job helping them transform into what they are. They are flexible learners. They know how to follow directions. They can also, work on their own and build directions. There's a lot of diversity in our veteran population. I know diversity is an incredibly important thing that HR departments and talent acquisition teams are focused on right now. You can really find your trifectas, I often say, in the veteran space. There's women, there's fit folks from all different race and ethnicities. Right now, the Commit Foundation is very focused on our diversity and inclusion work, and we have an event coming up next week where we'll talk about this. There's a high level of respect and certainly a high level of motivation with the men and women that serve. All of these skills can transfer into your organizations. This is the Commit model. And again, today, I see this as just a layer off of the onion. We would love the opportunity to work with all of you individually and help answer questions or perhaps build initiatives within your organization. We usually come in and do an assessment, and we help people prepare for veteran talent, how to attract the talent. We teach resume reviews and really recruiter readiness. We also teach about hiring. Often if you train recruiters, you might have a problem when it comes to hiring managers, and they create a bottleneck because hiring managers might not understand the ROI. Greg talked about your willingness to give them a chance. We help with the transition process in general. Just, it is a journey. It's not a light switch that you turn off and on. And we help companies really not only empower the men and women that serve and those veterans in your company, but how to keep them. You know, they're used to an upward trajectory. They're used to having pathways to grow. And we have found that a lot of companies, even the ones that have done really well with hiring veterans, they often run into challenges when it comes to empowerment and retention. A lot of times it's because of the underemployment challenge, which got mentioned at the beginning of this. We would love to work with you and share more about our invest model. So, you know, as we close out today on the commit portion, at least, you know, I'd like for all of you to think about what you could do in your organizations to make your place more veteran ready. For a long time, people talked about being veteran friendly, and we really encourage you to go that step further. You know, I will drive home what Greg said too. This 1% that defends the 99% of the way we live and defends our way of life, they are looking for ways to integrate not only into your company as an organizations, but into your community and into your church. And any of your organizations within here in the state. They make great neighbors. They make great Little League coaches. They make great Boy Scout leaders. And just finding that way, going beyond thanking them for their service and really thinking about that thank you and how you can incorporate these men and women into your daily life. And like Greg said, you know, if they're not a great hire, think about how you continue to help them. Maybe you can refer them some resources or introduce them to some other organizations. That's my call to action for each of you, to really think through how you can help the 1% that serve our country. I just want to reiterate to everybody on the call how dedicated Commit is to this space and how much we want to be a part of helping you integrate the talent from the men and women that have served our country and into your communities and into your companies and into the fabric of our state.
Alicia Decker says, in your opinion, how helpful are job boards that can be searched by military occupation codes versus just searching by keywords? Any experience with those or background?
Yeah, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the technology that's out there right now. Yeah, a lot of efforts have been made as translators for resumes, you know, translating your DD 214 into what you could do outside of the military. And then job boards, you know, I actually was asked to review one recently and I sort of mocked myself as my husband. I was a captain getting out at Fort Bragg, you know, entered a little bit about my background, and it gave me 2,416 options in the state of North Carolina. And like the top 3, you know, one of them had to do with the hotel industry, you know, and I'll stop there. I don't think they're great. And I think this is where, you know, we always talk about the quality of the service, not just the quantity served, and really being open to think outside the box and get to know someone. So, you know, I'm not a huge fan right now of the technology that's out there, just because I believe that they lack that human touch, and the algorithms, you know, for whatever reason, while they might help sort of direct a little bit, they really can't get to the core. And I believe our veterans deserve better than that. Greg, I don't know if you have any comments about the job boards or the tech that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm totally on board with you. I think it's hard for those things to kind of like automatically translate those things. I think the best thing that I found, and the highest, you know, advice or recommendations I find myself giving, and we talk a lot about, you know, at Commit events, is having those actual conversations with human beings, and the networking portion of it to help like talk through and find the right fit is probably far better than just going on and applying to a bunch of things. It's probably time far better spent having those conversations and figuring out those right fits than just applying to a whole bunch of things, whether it's from, you know, job boards or just written openings. You know, I would say you're just not going to get that full story, and what you might see on a resume as red flags because you didn't have like those conversations. And I don't know if there's like a great way to do that, because you have to be able to put things out and find good candidates. but I would maybe open that up if you see somebody, especially as a veteran, maybe just, if they don't meet all those requirements, maybe it's worth having a conversation from your end to confirm that before. And like we talked about, the best thing you could do if they're not the right fit is maybe help them, kind of find another person they could talk to, or kind of narrow down what they're actually looking for.
We like to, as humans, right? We like to put people in boxes, and we've been with your conversation so far been blowing away a lot of myths that exist about veterans. And one of those that I'd like you all to expand upon. In fact, I learned this at a Commit Foundation workshop when I met a Navy SEAL who was retiring from the SEALs, which means he'd been in for 20 years. And what occurred to me when hearing his story is that this generation of service members, and for him in particular, we've been at war for 20 years. And I think that that is something that is unique in the history of our country. And so what does that mean? What are some of those other differences that exist, right? We like put veterans in a box, and then a Vietnam era veteran is the same as a post 9/11 veteran, and I think that's not the case. So what are some of those other things that we should be more aware of in our society?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think everybody's experience, like we talked about, is different, right? And somebody from a Vietnam era's experience is very different. The way they were treated when they returned home, the way that profession was looked at that time. Certainly not the high level of professionalism now, where large, Fortune 500 corporations are actually seeking military veterans from certain organizations because of what they bring to the skills or to the table. That wasn't the case, and there's probably some resentment there, and there's probably, and it's probably earned, right? So I think it's hard to assume everybody's experience is the same, to assume every veteran, was a combat veteran who had to do the same type of tasks, and then all those veterans were affected the same way. That 20 years of war is a real thing, and ultimately, that involvement in war changes you. I don't think it changes you in a negative way, but it makes you different. It makes your outlook on things different. It makes your values on things. I know myself, the reason that it was driving me nuts was I value my time better than anything else, more than what you'll pay me, more than I want my time to be used effectively, because I have friends who don't have any more time. And I know that about myself, and I know that about the types of positions that I want to take. And I've had to kind of just become okay with that, something that's important to me. That's a change that I personally felt because of my experiences. Is that bad? No, it's just different. And somebody else who, it's my chemical makeup now of the things that are important to me. The other things you might find is a lot of veterans that come out of these kind of high stress situations are extremely calm people. They very, there's this expectation, or there's the box that everybody from the military is super rigid, and it's going to be in the boardroom, like drill sergeanting you and yelling at people and just super uptight. Where I would actually say those experiences dull those edges. Where I worked at Ascend Vision Technologies for 3 years, and I will tell you, there was never a true emergency one day in 3 years. However, I worked with people that thought every single day they had 20 emergencies, and every single day there was 20 fires. And then they would get upset with me because they'd say, "Oh, you're not getting as emotional about this as you should." And I said, "There's nothing to be emotional about." My calmness was contagious, though, and other people around me, that were younger 20-year-old kids, that this was their first job, saw that you can actually work through stressful situations in a calm, concise manner. You can do it in a talking voice if you're having friction with another person. People who haven't been exposed to high levels of stress like that feel like that's how they need to express how busy they are, how important things are. You may find that some veterans that you may think are in these boxes of kind of rigid and very uptight and are going to yell are actually extremely calming. The same way that calm is contagious, so is hysteria. And a lot of these people, you will not get them into a hysterical state because it doesn't exist in this world anymore. when you've been exposed to the fact that like your life and your friends' lives are completely on the line. And I think that's like a positive thing, and it's a positive thing in any organization to have like calming forces, because there's become this thing now where like the amount of work that you do, the overemphasis of how busy you are somehow translates into your like level of effectiveness at a company, where I would say like I would take a guy that gets all their work done at a high level in 3 hours than somebody who sits there for 10 hours and can't effectively like work through things. But then they tell you how much busier they are. The fact that like your cell phone makes you connected to work 24/7 is also like a thing that veterans are like used to having, but are also good at mitigating and managing. So yeah, I would just say be careful of those boxes and misconceptions, because some of those things could be extremely valuable and helpful, but not everybody has that same, not everybody's a Marine Corps drill sergeant and is going to come.
Greg, that's great. I would add, certainly any stereotypes around trauma. I often tell people that veterans are trained to run towards the firefight, not away from it. And these men and women have been trained to operate in environments that might not have a lot of direction. They often focus in this order when it comes to job selection on people, purpose, and then pay. And so, they want to work with great leaders. They don't, I saw one question about how a lot of Montana businesses are small businesses and their needs might be different than larger corporate resources. I can assure you, certainly the men and women that are coming through our program and moving to our amazing state, it's not the big company thing that they're looking for. They're looking for people, purpose, and pay. And that can be accomplished in a small environment. And we're certainly willing to work with all of you to help think through what that looks like in your organization. I love the notion of calm is contagious. It's true. And I think, another thing that veterans really add to organizations is just their level of care. They take care of each other and they bring that into your organization. And I think it's something that often gets undervalued when folks are acquiring them into their business units.
With that, I want to introduce our next presenter. And Rhonda Wakefield has, in the last year or 2 years that I've gotten to know Rhonda, has become a friend and a person that I see, and frankly has been leading a charge around this state behind SHRM's Veterans at Work certificate program. And I can't say thank you enough to Rhonda for jumping on. And I think this is going to be a great takeaway for all of you that are attending here today, is an understanding of what this certificate program looks like, and also learning from Rhonda, who is my favorite person involved with veterans, and that is also a mom of a combat veteran. And so with that, Rhonda, please unmute yourself and go right ahead. We can see your screen. Thanks.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's great. We can hear you.
Great. All right. Well, Dustin, thank you so much. And wow, what an honor to be in the company of Greg and Anne-Marie and Liza, who's coming up next. And as Dustin said, I am Rhonda Wakefield. I'm an HR consultant based out of Thompson Falls, Montana, a little tiny dot up in the corner, and completely different from where we were last year at this time doing this gathering. Last year we were on site in Billings, and I can tell you I met some incredible people there, Dustin included, and really helped me get connected with some more partners in just that push to support our veterans in the state of Montana. And I'll share a little bit more about myself in just a moment, but just to begin with, on behalf of Montana SHRM and the SHRM Foundation, with Veterans Day being tomorrow, we just want to thank all of the veterans out there for everything you've done, so that that 99% can move forward and be who we want to be, and hopefully we will give back in great returns for all of you. But as far as my story is concerned, we've talked to the veteran, we've talked and we've heard from Anne Marie, the spouse of a veteran. I am on the different perspective. I am the mom of a combat veteran and the daughter of a combat veteran as well. My son is an Iraqi war vet. My father is a disabled Vietnam veteran. My brother is a Gulf War veteran, and my daughter-in-law is a Navy veteran. And so for me, I look at it a little bit differently, but yet still all the same in the support of veterans. In 2007, I never imagined when 9/11 hit, sitting on the couch with my kids that morning watching TV, that it would impact my life so greatly. And 2007, my son graduated from high school in Columbia Falls, Montana, and he'd kind of been working behind the scenes. He was going to go into the Army, and I really didn't think that was going to happen. He wasn't 18 yet, so of course he needed signatures from mom and dad. Dad said, yeah, he needs the discipline, and mom said, no, you're not going. My recollection, of course, immediately was the things that my father has tried very, very hard and worked hard to overcome as a Vietnam veteran. And they said, you know, your son's probably safer with us in the Army than your daughter is driving around over in Seattle going to dental assistant school. And I said, you know, I'm not going to disagree with that. My concern is what's going to happen when he gets out? Who's going to help him? Who's going to be there for him? Well, they were persuasive, and off he went. He went into the Army on an airborne ranger contract, and about halfway through, they said, you know, these kids from Montana and Wyoming, they shoot really, really well. And I'm sure that you've heard that before. And they said, we really like him to come over into infantry, which he did. He was based out of Fort Drum, New York, for his entire time in the Army, with the exception of his year, a little over a year in Iraq. And when he got out in 2015 and came back to, again, little old Columbia Falls, Montana, I didn't realize the challenge that he was going to have finding work in the civilian world. And of course, being the mom, but also being the HR person, I thought, oh, he immediately, you know, he's going to want to go into what he did. He was in infantry. He'll go into highway patrol. He'll go into the police force. He'll, you know, he can go with border patrol. And he looked at me and said, no, Mom, that's not what I want to do. Over time, I remember him coming to me saying, Mom, I can't even get a job at McDonald's. Here he was, a staff sergeant. He was in charge of all of these people. You know, like Anne Marie said, people, purpose, then pay. He just wanted to make a difference. He wanted to contribute. But for so many of the reasons that Greg and Anne Marie have talked about, he was not getting very far. And so in 2015, when 2018, the Society for Human Resource Management launched a program, the Veterans at Work Certificate Program. And while I was working with my son trying to help him, this opportunity came up, and I jumped on board immediately and was so incredibly honored to be selected to be one of the 50 inclusion captains for this program. They launched it in the fall of 2018, and in 2019, our Montana State SHRM Council applied for a grant to further this, but the photo you see there is the 50 founding inclusion captains in the United States. I represent Montana, some of Idaho and Wyoming, they don't have inclusion captains. So if people could call me and ask for information on this program, I'm always happy to help. One of the other things, I am also an ESGR representative for this part of the state of Montana. So that helped me as well. Another great honor I have in my HR career. But as far as the SHRM Veterans at Work Certificate Program, I was really able to relate to this program specifically from my son, watching him, the challenges that he had, and really grasped this program and wanted to run with it. I will tell you, for the sake of time today, not that this isn't important, it's extremely important, but I'm going to kind of do a high level overview of this program, because there's a lot of things in here that Greg and Anne Marie have already mentioned, and I'm sure that Liza, who's coming up next with Instant Teams, is going to hit on it as well. But you know, we looked at the SHRM Foundation went forward and they partnered with some great organizations, Psych Armor, USAA, NBC, Comcast, Universal, and they put together this program that all organizations. It's specifically designed for HR professionals, the middle managers, supervisors, that small business that we were mentioning, some of you mentioned in the comments, that say, hey, we want to bring veterans in. We think we're veteran friendly, but we need to get veteran ready. I love that Anne Marie and Greg both brought that up because it really, really is important. This program can help you. It's a stepping stone in helping you get there. And one of the beautiful things about it is you can do it at home, do it in your own, at your own pace. What I would encourage you to do, though, is keep moving forward with it. If you can, sit down in one day and do it, and just get it done. But we looked at some of the situations and the difficulties that our veterans were facing. You know, the obstacles that they were coming across, especially as it pertained to civilian employment. This one statistic right in the middle there just jumps out at me as well. You know, once employed, nearly half of the veterans left their first position. In the first year, 65% left within their first 2 years. I remember being an HR director for an organization, and years ago I was a staffing consultant and did lots of placements. And of course, my heart always gravitated toward the veteran. I had a lot of failures. I look back now, though, and realize that those failures with my veterans hiring were actually successes because I learned from them. I learned what I could do differently. And as I sat today and listened to Greg, interestingly enough, none of us saw each other's presentations before today. And it's amazing how they're all coming together. And it excites me that we're all speaking the same language, so to speak, and we're on track with each other. I made some of those huge mistakes that Greg said he faced just as an employer and as an HR person. And this program is really designed to help reinforce the things that employers, supervisors, managers, HR professionals can do to overcome that and become veteran ready. You know, what does that look like? Helping them mitigate those challenges. So the Veterans at Work Certificate program that I just mentioned is, it's a 10-hour, approximately 10-hour self-driven program through the SHRM Foundation, and it has multiple pieces to it. It is, there's videos through Psych Armor, there are some quizzes, some reading that you have to do. And last year, 2019, yes, that was just last year, it feels like a long time ago, but the Montana SHRM State Council, we applied for an innovation grant to go ahead and promote this program throughout the state of Montana in a more impactful way. And we were so excited to be awarded that grant. What we did with it last year was we put out ads in every newspaper in the state of Montana throughout the month of November promoting this program. And really our call to action was employers and organizations out there who want to learn more about this, please get a hold of us. We will come to you and share this information. And that's part of my role as an inclusion captain. The SHRM Foundation and this innovation grant basically pay for me to travel wherever somebody is interested in hearing about the program to share the information. Also, as we know, Montana is a very large state. So my SHRM State Council members have also agreed that, hey, if it's somebody down in Billings or Miles City or wherever that organization might be, if we have a State Council member who's closer to that organization, they'll jump on board and share the information as well. We really, really want organizations to understand, again, in the next 5 years, 9,000 post 9/11 veterans are going to return to the US alone. 4 out of 5 employers are reporting the difficulties in filling jobs. These statistics are from last year. I don't even know what they look like right now, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a lot more, and there's a lot of opportunity out there, and we're missing out on some great candidates. And we want to help employers understand that our veterans, also our Guard and Reservists, we don't want to forget them, are a valuable talent. It's a valuable talent pool that we're not tapping into. I want to focus again for just a moment on the importance of the reserves. You know, your ESGR group right here in Montana, all over the United States, but in Montana is a huge supporter of our Montana Society for Human Resource Management and are always partnering with us. So we don't want to forget this important group either, because they struggle as well. I'm not going to read through all 4 of these different points here because I think you know them and we've talked about it before, but don't forget this group. And I want to reiterate that the program, the SHRM Veterans at Work Certificate Program, does have a large piece in here that focuses on employment with our Guard and Reserve. We've mentioned it already, but it is very, very true. The military has their own culture and they have their own cultural competencies as well. And you'll see there on the screen again, some of the different segments that are focused on in this program. One thing that is just really come to top of mind and seems to be so impactful to the participants in this program is the 15 things a veteran wants you to know. And Greg, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read through this. I'd be curious to see if you did, what you thought of it. But so many of the other veterans who have looked at this said, yes, that's right on. And I would encourage all of you to go out and look at it if you haven't. Again, just gives you some insight into interviewing a veteran, you know, how to talk to them, what's their mindset, what are they thinking, and some of the mistakes, quite honestly, that we in the human resources world, supervisors, managers, whoever's interviewing, some of the mistakes that we make and how we can overcome them, and just giving us an idea of what that looks like, what that mindset is. And so just talking specifically about Montana for a moment, again, these statistics are from last year because I wasn't able to get the new ones yet. We've had a little bit of a hold up in some of our resources at SHRM due to COVID, like everything else. But in 2019, 1 in 10 residents in Montana was a veteran. And I think Anne Marie just kind of updated that and maybe said 1 in 15. So, you know, there's a variance there, but still a very, very impactful number. In 2018, our veteran population sat at 10,387. That's a large portion of our state. Don't want to forget the female veterans specifically here, what their population looks like in Montana, that combat veteran population. Our younger people, the highest rates of unemployment among the veterans. And I don't know whether that's surprising to you all or not. It was to me, but something to keep in mind. Another really, really startling figure, 6% of Montana veterans live in poverty. That shouldn't be, it shouldn't happen. And then again, in 2017, September, Montana had 3,208 active duty military members, 4,434 reserve members. The newest numbers have not been published yet, but I do think that with the census and things, that number will become more accurate. That's still an astounding number as well. One of the things that this program focuses on specifically is the business case for hiring veterans. And we've heard Anne Marie, we've heard Greg. I don't want to reiterate, although it's really, really important and I don't think we can hear it enough, but just the business case for hiring veterans. I oftentimes, when I'm talking to employers about hiring veterans, I say, show me your job ad. What does your job ad look like? Better yet, go out on any job board, job service, whatever the case may be, and look at the help wanted ads. Look at the skills that employers are looking for, and you're going to find that everything they're looking for, and then some, fits right in with the qualifications, the skills that our veterans have, they've acquired. It's like second nature to them. They don't have to stop and think about being a team player. Are they not used to discipline? Absolutely. And one of the things that comes to mind for me when we go down through that list and looking at the bottom. So my son is now working for a manufacturing company in Columbia Falls. And when I ask him, you know, different things about employment, he's rather humble. He doesn't want to share. You would never know, in fact, that he is a veteran unless you specifically asked him. And typically he just goes about his day. But I said to him the other day, you know, what do you think is the most difficult part of you working in the civilian world. And he said, I'm so used to discipline, Mom. I'm a team player. I'm used to just getting in there and getting it done. When there's a problem, I don't see that. I look for the solution immediately. A problem, it's not a big deal. Like Greg just said, he doesn't get overwhelmed. He doesn't get stressed out. He said, what does stress me out the most though, is everybody else sitting around and not doing their job. He said, I'm discipline oriented. And I found that interesting. And I said, well, how are you working through it? And he said, I connected with some other veterans here and we're talking about it, and that's helping. And I never really thought that that would be something that would be important to an organization in Columbia Falls, Montana. I think we think of those things as tools and resources that might be necessary in larger corporate organizations, but it doesn't. It goes right back down to that small organization that so many other people have mentioned there. As we look through this list again, I don't have to tell you, the HR professionals or those of you who are willing and want to help our veterans get work, these are just, that's just a snippet of the skills and things that they bring to the organization, and helping them the business case for hiring veterans. I always say at the end of the day, hiring veterans, it's not only about their skills, it's just the right thing to do. And we see kind of on the bottom there, hiring veterans brings goodwill and it honors their service. We should all be doing that. The challenges, we've talked about this. Why don't organizations hire them? Can't read their resume, the skills translation, the skills mismatches, afraid of PTSD, the negative stereotypes, future deployments. Are they gonna, how long are they gonna be here? Are we gonna have to retrain? The weekend warriors, are they gonna acclimate to our environment? And quite frankly, we just don't know how to communicate with them. Again, Anne-Marie and Greg have mentioned this as well. This program, the SHRM Veterans at Work Certificate Program, helps employers work through these challenges. There's a lot of different scenarios, lots of good videos, interactive type things that can help you. And you can share it with all of the people in your organization so that everybody gets on the same page. How do we overcome those challenges, and what does the program provide? Again, it provides information for employers to transition from veteran friendly to veteran ready. That's it. I've seen or heard that as a key theme throughout this presentation today. It'll help better understand the value veterans can bring to the workplace. It's going to assist your organization, be that HR people, supervisors, managers, help everyone with the engagement and integration of veterans in the workplace. The goal is really to help your organization become successful. So when you're successful, your veteran's going to be successful, and vice versa. And ultimately, your business and your customers are going to see success from that as well. It's going to help provide proactive employment practices designed to attract, hire, and retain veterans. It can mitigate the challenges faced by employers and veterans as well, and then provide tools to measure both the effectiveness of your initiatives to hire veterans and to impact and help the impact that veterans make within your organization. My apologies, I got tongue-tied there. And so looking at, again, at Montana specifically, we have 7 SHRM chapters in the state of Montana. Located all the way across the state, and all of us as a state council and as a chapter are excited to continue moving forward with this initiative. All of our 7 chapters in the state have gone through the training or this presentation and have committed to completing the Veterans at Work Certificate Program. They're not all quite there, but they're getting there. The ESGR has been a huge supporter of this. In fact, last year I was able to present this program information to our state ESGR board. They were super excited about it and on board with it as well. JSET groups across the state of Montana, our Chamber of Commerce has expressed interest in, hey, we need to get moving forward with this. Veterans and military groups alike. And, the media last year, like I said, they shared, they helped us with that news broadcast all across the state in all in all newspapers for the month of November, and specifically to celebrate Veterans Day. I think Veterans Day should be every day personally. And then job fairs. And then what we're asking again is, if any of you know of an organization, a large gathering, a conference where there's lots of employers, where they'd be willing to have us come in and share this information, just again, to keep spreading the word and helping employers, managers, supervisors, please reach out to me. And again, if I can't do it, any of my SHRM State Council people are willing to do so. This is just kind of a screenshot of what that program looks like. It's you take a little survey, you read the guidebook, take a quiz, you watch some videos, another quiz, again, about 10 hours total. I encourage you, do it all in one shot if you can. If not one, do it in 2 days. I will put one disclaimer out there. It is not extremely user-friendly, I'm told. It's been a couple of years since I've went through the program, and I was kind of in that very beginning phase where it went fairly smoothly. Over time, it has gotten not as user-friendly. So if you have issues with it, let me know, and I can reach out directly to the coordinator of the program, and we can get you through it or answer any questions. There's my contact information. Our goal in Montana, and we hope that you will help us reach that by sharing the information on our program. We'd love to get at least 1,000 Veterans at Work certificates issued in Montana. You know, we've got such a large veteran population here, and I will tell you that so far Montana has been the most active in this program. That's great. I love hearing the updates, and so the rest of the states are kind of watching us. I would love to have all of you, share the information. If you can all get 5 to 10 people to complete this program, it's not only going to help our veterans, but it'll help us keep moving this program forward as well.
What I would love to do now is, and I think is going to be so powerful for you. Yes, we've talked about veterans, and Greg mentioned military spouses at the beginning. I think it's a piece that not only here in Montana, that it is a demographic that we are missing the boat with, but actually across the country. We talked about a 24% unemployment rate prior to COVID amongst military spouses. And these individuals, one of whom I'm about to introduce, are some of the most impressive, highly educated, highly skilled individuals in our country, and we need to be doing better. With that, I'm going to introduce to you Liza Rodewald. Liza is the founder of a company called Instant Teams, who is, frankly, this is in her bio, that they are changing the shape of the future of work for companies and workers all over this world. I think, she will probably correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's 10,000 military spouses that are using your technology platform right now, connecting military spouses with remote employment. Remote work, kind of a big deal in this world right now, and a big deal that Liza and her company saw long before COVID. So with that, Liza, I'd love to have you share with us, and I just want to say thank you one more time for joining us all the way from Hawaii.
Yes, so first of all, thank you so much, Dustin, and everyone for having me here. I'm happy to bring kind of a different perspective and another side of the conversation between veterans and military spouses. Just to give you a little background before I get into my personal story, just like to give a framework of what Instant Teams is. So Instant Teams builds high quality customer support, customer success, and operational teams for companies across the globe with military spouse talent, which enables 24/7 support. And that's what we do in a nutshell. We're all about remote work, and I'll get into why that's important for the military spouse community. And I'll talk a little bit of how military spouses are different than veterans and how the hiring programs and the different things that we do need to be different in order to serve both of those demographics. So to kick off, I'd like to just start with some demographics on the military spouse community itself so that we all get the same reference point of who we're talking about. So currently there are 1.1 million active duty spouses and 4.3 million veteran spouses. So a huge population of professionals that have a lot of education. So 67% of spouses have at least a bachelor's degree, 23% have a master's degree and beyond, and 1 in 3 are actually veterans themselves. And we hit this stat a little earlier, but I just want to emphasize, and everyone just look at the big number for a second, 24% unemployment. These are spouses who are actively seeking jobs that have not been able to get them. This is pre-COVID. At the height of COVID, we saw what, 15% unemployment rate? So we're still talking a massive amount of unemployment on the military spouse side. So why is that exactly? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and I think that'll help you understand what the differences are, what the needs are, and then how we can together really help support this community. So my name's Liza Rodewald. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Instant Teams, but I'm also an active duty Army spouse myself. So here you see a picture of my husband and my kids and I at one of his change of command ceremonies that happened not too long ago here in Hawaii. But prior to becoming a military spouse myself, I was a software engineer and I ran my own software consulting firm. So I had created to myself a fully distributed company that could move along with me no matter where I was. Well, then my husband was in the reserves at the time when we got together. And then after we got married, he said, "Hey, Liza, maybe I want to go back active duty." And so I was like, well, my company's distributed. I can move it anywhere. So, okay, let's go for it. That was my first introduction to the military spouse community. So at that time, we moved to Tennessee and I moved into my first predominantly military neighborhood. And I will tell you, every single spouse I met at any point in time would say, "Liza, how are you working? How do you still have a job? How can I get a job too?" We're talking PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, all kinds of skill levels that are just sitting there completely untapped because they move so often. So here's a little timeline on my personal story. So after I said, "Yes, honey, we can go back active duty and move around," this is my timeline. I moved 6 times in 7 years when he went back active duty. So just a little visual. Here's some pictures of the moving truck that I am all too familiar with at this point. Here's a picture of me working on my laptop while moving boxes, are sitting in I think that's my bedroom at the time. So 6 times in 7 years. So as hiring managers and individuals, professionals yourselves that are all on this call, can you imagine trying to maintain and grow and progress in your career, moving that often if you're going in person and working where you cannot take your job with you and you're going to move and have to reapply for another job and go through that process? A lot of spouses at that point just kind of give up because it takes so long to get hired somewhere that they're like, well, I'm moving so often. What is even the point? And so that's where the real problem lies. And it's the remote work option of being connected to a company. I will say one good thing out of COVID is that sped up the timeline of companies adopting remote work, which is creating a great opportunity in the military spouse community itself. So I'll tell you a little bit about Instant Teams and I'll fold in some of the stories, but if you have questions for me, along the way, please do put them in the chat. Happy to address them when we get to the end. But Instant Teams is built on 2 really special things. Military spouses, obviously, all of our talent is from the military spouse talent pool, and I'll get a little bit deeper into that, and technology. You're seeing a picture of myself and my co-founder, Erica McManus. She's also an Army spouse located in Yorktown, Virginia right now. And her and I together really saw a need in the marketplace. So there's need for high quality, on-demand, elastic remote workforce kind of talent for companies. And then we've got an untapped talent resource of military spouses who are ready to go, skill ready, highly skilled, highly qualified, used to working in the civilian sector. They're truly plug and play. So we brought these 2 things together, created our own proprietary team building software that we use in order to pre-vet, pre-queue, get military spouses ready for direct employment with the companies that they're going to be working for. So let me tell you a little bit kind of under the hood of what Instant Teams does. I'll go through a few customer success and some case studies that we have, as well as get into the different types of talent and how to engage as we get a little bit down later into the presentation. Excuse me. So we really build remote teams that are built to serve our customers. All of our teams function exactly like an in-house team with all the cost benefits of outsourcing. So I just listed a few areas that we've helped companies in the past build these teams. So customer success managers and agents, technical support agents, marketing managers, marketing support, project managers, program managers, back office, HR, any type of administrative support talent. All of our talent's high quality, pre-vetted, ready to go. What's really unique about military spouses and that we've been able to leverage really strong for a business case at Instant Teams is when you're an active duty spouse, you're located globally and in every time zone. So companies can really use that to leverage creating really a 24 support operations system. As you may know, living in Montana, it's very hard to get people to work like a evening shift, a weekend shift, a night shift. But those kinds of things are perfect for military spouses because some of them only want to work on the weekends. Some of them want 40 hours. Some of them want 30 hours. It's a very flexible workforce. And then we have built teams for companies of spouses in Japan, in Germany, in Guam. So we cover 24/7, but it's their daytime, which really increases retention for companies, right? So we're not asking anybody to work a night shift overnight. We pull and plug and play these people together. So everyone's working a day, everyone's happy, and the retention really goes up for the companies. We curate all of our teams to match your company's culture. So we really work within that. We build teams within 5 days. So we're really fast because of the technology that backs Instant Teams and how we plug into organizations. We're very focused on finding the need in the company, solving the company's problem with military talent. So not only is it a good social impact to hire military spouses, but really solving a real need that you might have as a company and finding unique ways to plug and play this talent pool and this talent resource into what you may be already doing or a need that you have, or maybe an outsourced vendor you've used before and interested in switching or doing something different. Like we can really help in all that. Here's just a brief overview of some of our customers who we worked with. We have worked with a lot of technology companies. We have brick and mortar, so Walmart is one of our customers. Seesaw for distance learning. We've built remote support teams for them. Hazel Health Tech. We've worked with the USO. We're building a telehealth solution for the Air Force currently. So we have a wide range of variety of things that we can do for companies. And military spouses are very unique in that the talent skills are so diverse within the community. Like there's something for everyone, right? Whatever you need, big or small, big teams of people or small teams of people, we can really help to do that. Instant Teams is also partners with the Department of Defense and their military spouse employment partnership and some of the biggest military nonprofits. So we really give back, dig into the space and try to help in any way that we can, both on the employer side and on the military spouse side. I just included a few slides here. Happy to give these to anybody afterwards if you're interested in having a copy of it. But of some of the things we've done, just so maybe it would pique your thought process of how you might be able to use military spouse talent within your organization. So for Walmart, you would think, typically when I think of Walmart, I think of cashiers and people at the register and people doing those kinds of things. But what we did for Walmart was build a data processing team that went in and measured the architectural files of all the Walmart stores throughout the United States, material by material, in order for them to get accurate paint bids. So we built an entire operational team to do this, a manager that manages the team, the people that measure all the files, they send the data back to Walmart, work with Walmart's corporate headquarters to determine good fits for everything. And then we've saved Walmart over $1.2 million last year just by deploying this operational team that works for them. So maybe that'll start getting your head thinking about your companies you're working with, the types of projects that you may have, the types of teams that you might have for military spouses that would be able to plug and play instantly into what you're doing. Another example, I mentioned Seesaw before. If any of you have kids that are doing distance learning now, a lot of our team members do. Seesaw is one of the leading platforms in the distance learning education where they take pictures of the homework and submit it. So we have a whole team of military spouses that are reviewing homework, doing customer support, helping on the educational side and the support of Seesaw. So definitely flexible in how we're helping them. And it's been fun to see that sector kind of grow during this current environment that we've been in. I also want to just reiterate that this is for companies of all sizes. So you can hire one spouse, you can hire 100 spouses, you can hire 300 spouses. Like, we do work with everyone. And military spouses, every time our customers say they are the best hires that they've had because they are so determined. I think we hit a little bit on it, and I'll go into it a little bit deeper, but they're resilient. They integrate well into environments. So here's just one of our smaller customers, because I want to make sure Walmart plus, some of the smaller customers as well, that hired a military spouse. And she says she's the best employee that she's ever had. And we hear that really often. And we hear that story a lot with companies we work for. They say, hey, I came to Instant Teams because I've hired a military spouse before, and she was the hardest worker, or he was the hardest worker. And military spouses are both female and male, by the way. So they're really hard workers, high retention rates, and just really good for business. So I included a little bit here of my internal team. So these are people that work specifically for Instant Teams internally, all military spouses. A lot of them are military spouses and were veterans that had served in the different branches as well. But we have, in addition to this, over 160 military spouses that work for Instant Teams on a daily basis. And we're actually hiring this month, like 120 more. So we have a lot of spouses that are working for the company, a lot of really amazing success stories. And they really, my team that runs and powers my company is all built from military spouse talent and veterans. And I will say they work hard. They are dedicated, and they are the reason Instant Teams has been such a huge success, because they are mission oriented and very passionate about their careers and their work experience. So a little look on Instant Teams under the cover. So like I mentioned, we have the remote workforce, plug and play, ready to go. We have over 10,000, I think actually, in fact, we're at like 12,000 right now, military spouses that are in our system, ready to work. They've been pre-vetted. They're high quality. They've gone through our interview process, and they're ready to be plugged and played into organizations. So you don't have to worry about translating skills. You don't have to worry about spending a lot of time doing tons of interviews. We've done that heavy lifting on that side. So they're really talent that's ready to go. And they're also very diverse. So 92% of our talent workforce is females. And then within that, you can imagine the military spouse community is very, very diverse in all types of people groups located all around the world. So definitely a highly diverse workforce. So just to recap, so why should you hire a military spouse? Why should you consider this? One is they have extremely high retention. If you're familiar with customer support in any way, shape, or form, the turnover rate is over 30%, industry standard. At Instant Teams, it's less than 8%. So when we put somebody in, they are highly dedicated to their role because they don't want to lose their job as they're moving. And you saw the picture of me with moving boxes and my laptop. They will work through a PCS. So if you're concerned, like, well, if they're moving so often, how much time off do they request? It's basically zero. They will work straight through. They will take their laptop. All of our team members, actually in Q3 last year, 2 of our team members moved during a PCS. 1 launched our Instant Teams Academy, and 1 doubled our revenue within a quarter, all during a PCS move. So high retention, high quality. I mentioned already the degrees of the bachelor's degrees, the master's degree, and beyond. They have skill sets in all kinds of ways because they've taken different jobs, taken different roles as they've moved around. So lots of high quality there. They're skill ready. So unlike some of the veterans that are transitioning and need to transition to civilian life, they've been living civilian life, right? So they don't need that kind of mentorship. They just need an opportunity. And that's what they're really looking for. Is there an opportunity for me to be able to continue having my job with your organization as I move to another state? Is there a way for me to be able to advance in my career with your company once I'm plugged in? Those are the things they're looking for. And then the unique value prop of hiring a military spouse is that they are located globally. So if you need to extend your operations, your hours, you want to cover different time zones, you want to have somebody, maybe you do business outside of your state, you'd like to have somebody located in another state or even outside of the country, if you Germany or Japan or Italy, some of these other places, really gives you like a global view of talent and being able to access that all from Montana, where you are currently, being able to expand that out. So with instant teams, like how to hire the spouse, first of all, I want to say military spouses are very different than veterans in that they don't normally self-identify. So they're hard to spot sometimes because most of the time they've had negative experiences with not being hired because they're a military spouse and they're going to move. So I can't tell you the number of stories that I've heard from spouses within our community and within all the different groups that we're involved in that say, you know, I don't get the job because they know I'm going to move. And so I don't tell them I'm a spouse. Like they're afraid to tell you that they're a military spouse because they don't want it to be held against them. So what we did kind of at Instant Teams is say, you know, we're all about spouses. So they all self-identify with Instant Teams because they know we're here for them, right? They know that it's a safe place and they know that we go talk to people like you and tell you the value of hiring the military spouse. And we create ways that you can work with the military spouse community so that it's a win-win for both sides. So they don't self-identify. So that's just something to be aware of. But Instant Teams does create kind of a plug and play military spouse hiring program. So we really do want to partner with companies. We'll figure out where your needs are and figure out where you can start to utilize military spouse talent within your organization. We also serve as the employer of record in our case, so that you don't have to worry about state compliance, because it does get complex as you start hiring spouses specifically, because I'm sure I'm talking to a bunch of HR professionals here, so I'm telling you things you already know. But a spouse may be living in Tennessee, but their state of record might be in California, for example. So the tax complexities, and then they move again. So workman's comp in a remote environment and tax can get kind of difficult, but Instant Teams does all of that so that we're removing the barriers so that it's easy for you to hire and have the spouses on your team. We really go after it as a partnership relationship. I know I mentioned that before, but we really like to work with you to determine what the needs are, how we can plug spouses in, how we can solve a real problem that you have within your company and your organization, and how we can partner together so that it really is a win-win. So we do a lot of custom solutions, big, small, doesn't matter. We'd like to just remove all the obstacles so that you get really high quality, great talent. So here's just a little bit of an overview of the types of teams we build. Of course, military spouses come in all shapes and sizes. So there's a lot of different types of talent that you can access through the community. There's a lot of different programs. Instant Teams is one way you can engage with the military spouse community. It's not the only way. Obviously, there are other things, but I do encourage you to think about your strategy, because in the military spouse community, there is a lot of programs that are for veterans and spouses. And the and spouse always gets kind of hidden underneath, and most spouses will not apply or will not come to you because they'll think it's really not for them. And it's designed for the veteran and it kind of shoves the spouse in, but the needs are different, right? When you're talking about an active duty military spouse, they're not going to be in one place. They're not retiring and going to a location they want to stay at. They're still moving around. They're still progressing their career in just different ways than a retired or out of transitioning veteran and their spouse would be, right? So those needs are just different. And so the programming needs to be different. So I would encourage you, if you do want to hire military spouses and you're wanting to include them, you know, make it bold and make it separate than just the veteran program that you have, so that they know they're welcome and they know you understand who they are and you want to welcome them into your organization as well. So that's all I'll say about that topic, but happy to go into it a little bit more. Happy to answer any of the questions that anybody might have about military spouses or how they're different, or a hiring initiative that you have together, or how we can partner as Instant Teams. So I put my email on here, liza@instantteams.com. This is my phone number. Screenshot it. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. You could also go to our website, instantteams.com, see all the information. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Instant-Teams, I think, is our LinkedIn. If you look on people, you can see the 150, 160 spouses that are currently working, kind of go through and just look at the profiles and see the types of talent that really exists in this community. So thank you guys so much for your time. Dustin, it's been fun to share a little bit of a different perspective. I think veterans and spouses, such a great, unique community that has such great, amazing skill sets. And as I think, anytime I get the opportunity to highlight the military spouse, it's always a good time.
Liza, how about so spouses that speak other languages? How about connection there?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because we have actually some partnerships with some of the military spouse nonprofits that serve like Spanish speaking spouses and different. And a lot of companies actually want bilingual spouses that work. So we have French speakers, we have Spanish speakers, we have all kinds of different bilingual spouses that work on our customer contracts that we have. So we utilize that as well. And then we also integrate them into, our internal teams. So of course they have the opportunity to be, both English speaking and bilingual, but it's definitely a bonus. And it's something that we've been able to utilize really well as a great selling point of the spouse community, to be able to get that bilingual support with a US citizen that is, high quality and located globally.
I am thrilled about the networking that's happening. People are sharing email addresses and communication and want to connect. And obviously this went over, which means that we want to continue this conversation. And I hope that by Dustin sending out kind of an additional email that we all can do that. I think about on the news this morning, I was watching it before we started, and they talked about the vaccine and how what they've decided to do is have the military make sure the vaccine gets out to everybody when it's ready. And I thought about the mission behind that, right? And how powerful that is, that we think about looking at this community that we have that we know is so prepared and will get the job done. And it's just very timely. So I just want to thank you all for being here and a part of the program, and so proud of all of you and all of the business professionals that joined today to learn more. We are sponges to be able to get this information and make sure we're hiring in a method that makes all of us grow and develop. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here today and for helping to share this message to all across the state of Montana. What a powerful day. So thank you all.